The Detroit Lions fall 29-24 to the Pittsburgh Steelers in basically a must-win game. Now, technically, the Lions are not eliminated from the playoffs, but this is the first time since 2022 that the Lions have lost back-to-back games. And truly, this was a very, very frustrating game because the Lions should have absolutely been up 10-3 headed into half. A crazy play, and you have to give him full-on credit to Kenneth Gainwell on basically a Hail Mary at the end of the game. It was a pass interference against Alex Anzalone. Didn't touch him after he hit the ground. Obviously, just a crazy kind of result, and really kind of the ending of the game as well, and really kind of encompassed the whole kind of game for the Lions because it seemed like that this team just, I don't want to say wasn't prepared, but the one thing about this team that I haven't seen very much this year, which is really kind of an identity of this Detroit Lions team, especially under Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, is grit. I just really haven't seen kind of that grit this year. Now, do I think that means the locker room is bad by any chance? No, I don't necessarily think so. I think this is just kind of what Dan Orlovsky was saying, I believe, on ESPN. I believe it was him saying that this just kind of iteration of the Lions is kind of over. Now, with that being said, does that mean kind of the Super Bowl window is completely closed? No, I don't necessarily think so, but I think kind of the iteration of who these Detroit Lions are, it really kind of showed in this game that, hey, like this is a Lions team. This is kind of a Lions overall roster that, or just kind of approach that really doesn't have it for the Super Bowl. And it truly starts out with the offensive line and the defensive line. In this game, I thought that the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially really late in this game, was able to do whatever they wanted to. Jaylen Warren ran for 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, and his 2 touchdowns were late in this game, but if you really watched the game, you really knew once he got past the middle linebackers that he was gone. And it's kind of full-on credit to not only Pittsburgh for running effectively, but I think it just shows you a little bit of what this Lions team is missing. And that means their 2 safeties, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, did not play in this game. There was 1 touchdown that I believe it was Harper at the safety position, kind of went inside, didn't go outside. Jaylen Warren was able to end up getting a big touchdown run from there. But really, even like the defensive line, like I want to give a ton of credit to Aiden Hutchinson. I thought Hutchinson had moments in this game that he played very, very well. But there was also moments in this game that this defensive line wasn't able to get pressure. This defensive line wasn't able to stop the Steelers from running the ball. 230 yards of offense on the ground. You don't typically see that against this Lions team. And then you look on the opposite side, offensively, they had 18 yards running the ball in this game, which for the Lions is absolutely unacceptable. They had 12 carries. Obviously, I know that like this offensive line isn't healthy whatsoever. They, I believe, had their 3rd or 4th kind of center in for the season throughout this game because just how much they weren't able to get a push. But like this is a offensive line that wasn't able to really protect Jared Goff very much as well. Like they allowed a safety. And do I want to say that kind of lost them the game? No, not necessarily. I think the safety and obviously going for it on 4th and 3 early on in this game were kind of parts of that, but obviously it really ended up coming down to the last part of the game. And this is one thing that will be talked about for a while. I know a lot of Lions players and a lot of Lions fans were really upset about the first offensive pass interference called against Isaac Tesla. I obviously think that was the wrong call. Do I think it completely changes everything in this game? Do I think it completely changes the outlook of this Lions season? I think it changes it a little bit just because I do think if they win that game, they maybe go to the playoffs. There's still, I believe, I think a 7% chance that they go to the playoffs. They need to win out, which they haven't won back-to-back games in a really long time, and they also need the Packers to lose out, which the Packers are playing the 49ers, which there's a real possibility that they lose that game. Then they're playing the Minnesota Vikings, which is less likely that they lose that game, but I'll also kind of preview the Vikings game for the Lions happening tomorrow here relatively shortly. But this was an offensive pass interference call that basically Isaac Tesla was kind of pushed into the other corner for a little bit, or kind of the other corner really led him into the other corner, which I don't necessarily agree that that was offensive pass interference. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown's second offensive pass interference was obviously, in my opinion, a pass interference. He pushed off. But what a heads-up play by him to toss it back to Jared Goff. Obviously, because it was an offensive pass interference, it did end up mattering at the end of the day. The Lions didn't end up obviously scoring the touchdown, even though that Jared Goff basically leaped into the end zone. What a crazy way it would have been to end the game. But even with that being said, like, let's say you win this game, you still don't necessarily control your destiny at that point. Now, obviously, you need a lot more help because you end up losing this game to the Steelers. But if we're being completely honest with each other, I don't think the Lions absolutely deserve to even win this game. I don't even think the Lions maybe even deserve to have a shot at the end of the day. Now, they did. They should have won. With about 25 seconds left, they had the ball at basically the 1-2 yard line with one timeout left. I know the Lions had really struggled running the ball, and kind of that pick play that they were in is a pretty common concept in the red zone, especially that early on. But you had one timeout. I would have loved to see the Lions at least try to run the ball with David Montgomery. In this game, David Montgomery had 4 carries, 14 yards. Which obviously isn't great, but he was at least a little bit more effective than Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't able to do anything offensively in this game. Did have 10 receptions, 66 yards, so he was able to help out there. I thought J-Mo had some good games. I thought Amon-Ra was a little bit not involved as much as he typically should have. Obviously had the touchdown, but just overall, it's obviously a very, very disappointing game for the Lions. Obviously, their season isn't necessarily completely over. I do want to kind of talk a little bit about the Vikings and just kind of my thoughts on that game real quick, because J.J. McCarthy will not be playing in this game. He has a hairline fracture. It sounds like it's Max Brosmer that will be playing in this game. This is going to be a game on the road for the Lions. If you lose this game, you're going to continue to fall down the draft board. And it's going to be something that, honestly, if you're a Lions fan, like, the chance you even go into the playoffs is very, very small. So, like, at this point, I don't want to say the Lions need to lose this game or that they will lose this game. But, like, if you lose this game, you have obviously a little bit of a friendlier schedule next year. And I don't want to say that just throw away this game, because I don't think any of these players will. I think the Lions will actually win this game. I think it will actually probably go into next week with the Lions having a shot at the playoffs. And I truly do fully believe that, because I think the 49ers are actually going to beat the Packers. I actually do. I think that 49ers team is a very, very good team. I think they'll beat the Packers. And I think it'll all come down to Week 18, having to go into Chicago. Obviously, still needing a little bit of health as well. But I don't think this Minnesota Vikings team is very good with Max Brosmer as the starting quarterback. With that being said, though, like, I talked about kind of this Steelers game. Like, I didn't think that they would come into Detroit and win this game. I don't think a lot of people thought they would come into Detroit and win this game, to be completely honest with you. But this is a Minnesota Vikings team, a team at home in this game, that they just don't still scares me. Like, I know defensively the Lions have a ton of injuries, and I do think that they will try to attack this secondary because of just how kind of frustrating the secondary has been. I think they'll be able to run the ball effectively unless something completely changes. I don't necessarily see that as of right now. I think it's going to be one of those games of you're just going to be frustrated the whole time. And I think that's just what this Lions team has been, is frustrating, especially the last couple of weeks. Like, I don't know anyone watching that game against the Steelers and enjoying it. Like, it was like, hey, the offense finally scored. Defense gives up a big touchdown. Offense finally scores. Defense gives up a big touchdown. And even when the offense scored and kind of gave the Lions a chance, I'm one of those people that was like, should I even get excited? Like, can this defense even get a stop? And I think the bigger picture of this is, yes, you want to beat the Vikings. And yes, I think you're a better team than the Vikings. Yes, I think you're more talented than the Vikings. I think JJ is going to be a guy that's going to probably be targeted quite a few in this game. Justin Jefferson is a great wide receiver. He obviously hasn't had the season that he's fully expected to have. But obviously when you have a wide receiver like that, especially going up against a secondary that's still pretty hurt in this game, you're definitely going to kind of keep an eye on that matchup. Obviously, T.J. Hawkinson is still going to be involved. Defensively, I don't think the Vikings necessarily scared me too much. But again, if you can't run the ball effectively in this game, you're still going to put a ton of pressure on Jared Goff to be able to win this one. But I do think the Lions end up winning this game, to be completely honest with you. The Vikings, I don't think is as good as the Steelers. But at this point, like I was saying, I think there's some things going on right now. And I think There's obviously some frustration with the locker room. I think there's some frustration probably at the head coaching position. And am I saying to doubt this team? No, I'm not saying to doubt this team, but sometimes I think maybe the healthiest thing for an organization like the Lions with as much talent as they have is not only obviously getting healthier, but maybe having a season like this where there's disappointment, where there's been conversation about needs that the Lions have had and really haven't addressed. Maybe missing the playoffs will do that for the Lions. But I'll obviously talk a little bit more about that in kind of the preseason, postseason, heading into next year. But yeah, I think the Lions end up winning this game. I think the Lions are the much better team, more talented team. I think the offense will be able to run the ball a little bit more effectively. Just at this point, the Lions just don't have the health on defense and even the offensive line to say that, hey, they're going to absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage. I don't know if they're necessarily going to do that, but I think they should be able to at least run the ball a little bit more effectively. And I would love to see a guy like David Montgomery get a little bit more involved offensively, especially because Jahmyr Gibbs struggled running the ball, and sometimes you need a little bit of a bigger back to do that. So interesting to see what happens tomorrow. But yeah, thank you for everyone for tuning in. Have a Merry Christmas tomorrow. Try to enjoy the Lions. But make sure you tune in to my recap after the game.